Have you ever looked at your book idea and felt that little tug inside you? The one that says, this matters, this means something, this is what I am feeling called to write. And then almost immediately, another voice comes in. Maybe it says, who are you to write this? Maybe it says, this is too personal, too ordinary, too risky, too much. Maybe it even says, someone else has already said this better, or maybe this story only matters to you. But my friend, the part of your story that feels the most personal might be the very part someone else is waiting to read, because the book only you can write comes through your experiences, your perspective, your emotional truth, and the particular way you see, hear, feel, and make meaning from the world. So today, we're talking about how to access your unique creative truth, how your NLP modality shapes the way that truth comes through you, and how to begin writing the scene, chapter, or message you might have been circling around for far too long. If you feel called to write a book, but writer's block, procrastination, and self-doubt keep pulling you from the page, you're not alone, and you're not meant to stay stuck. Hi, I'm Maddison, author and life coach, and I've created this podcast as a creative space grounded in faith and mindset transformations to help you break through your blocks, gain creative clarity, and finally finish the book you're meant to write. So grab your cup of liquid gold and let's write the darn book together. Before we dive in today, I'm so excited to let you know that on the 30th of June, I'm hosting a free masterclass on Zoom called Write to Your Wiring, Discover Your NLP Modality and How It Shapes the Way You Write. In this session, I'll be helping you understand how your mind naturally processes creativity, story, structure, dialogue, and emotion so that you can start working with the way you're uniquely wired to write rather than trying to force yourself into a process that was never designed for you. We'll explore the 4 NLP modalities for writers: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and auditory digital, and you'll begin to recognize how your dominant modality shapes the way you access your story, where you tend to get stuck, and what helps the words start flowing again. You'll find all the details in the show notes, or you can visit madisonmichaels.com/masterclass. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Write the Darn Book. I'm your host, Maddison Michaels, and today's Mindset Monday episode is for the writer who knows there is something meaningful sitting beneath the surface of their book. Today, we're going to talk about the kind of creative truth that makes a book feel alive and how you can begin writing from the part of you that only you can bring to the page. And this one will resonate because every writer reaches a point where they have to choose. They can keep writing around the truth or they can begin writing from it. And this applies for both fiction and non-fiction books. And by truth, I mean emotional truth, the human truth, the part of the book that feels alive because it's come through you, through your lived experience, through the questions you keep returning to, through the ache you understand and the hope you still carry, and through the particular way you notice things that someone else might miss. That's the part of the book that makes it so uniquely yours to write and completely irreplaceable. So let's begin there. I want you to think for a moment about the stories that have stayed with you, the books you still remember years after reading them, the scenes that made your chest tighten and that you felt deep inside, the lines you carried around with you because they gave words to something you'd felt but had never quite been able to say. Those moments stay with us because they carry truth. And often, that truth began as something deeply personal for the writer. Maybe it began as a question they couldn't quite let go of. Maybe it began as a wound they were trying to understand. Maybe it began as a hope they kept returning to, even when they didn't know how to express it. That's one of the beautiful paradoxes of writing. The more honestly you enter your own particular truth, the more universal the writing often becomes. Because readers may have lived completely different lives. They might have made different choices. They might come to your book from a world that looks nothing like your own, but they know what it is to want something. They know what it is to lose something. And they know what it is to doubt themselves, but hope for more, and to wonder whether they're enough. When you write from your own creative truth, you give the reader a doorway into theirs. And this is where so many writers begin to pull back. Because the moment the writing starts to feel real, the nervous system pays attention. It realizes, oh, this matters. This is getting really close and personal. This might reveal something about me. This might be seen by others. And suddenly, the writer, who is moving along quite nicely, finds themselves editing every sentence, or changing the scene, or making the characters safer, or drifting into another project entirely. That resistance often shows up right before the truth comes through. So if you have a scene, a chapter, an idea, or a message that you keep circling, I want you to be curious about that. There might be something there. There might be energy there. There might be the heartbeat of the book waiting beneath the avoidance. And I want to say this clearly. Writing your truth does not mean you have to confess your private life on the page. It doesn't mean every book becomes an autobiography. And it certainly doesn't mean you have to expose yourself in a way that feels unsafe or unwise. Your emotional safety matters too. So if something feels too raw, too close, or simply not ready to be written yet, honour that. Care for yourself first and trust that the right doorway into the truth will come when your system feels ready. Because writing your truth is not about forcing yourself to reveal everything. It's about finding the honest emotional thread that belongs in the work. Creative truth is deeper than literal fact. It is the emotional honesty underneath the story. A fiction writer may pour their truth into a character who's lived a completely different life. A non-fiction writer may pour their truth into a chapter that helps someone else feel less alone. And a business owner writing a book may pour their truth into the perspective only they can bring because of the road they've walked. The truth is the pulse beneath the content. And when that pulse is missing, the writing can sound polished but hollow. It can have great technique but very little life. It can tick every craft box and still feel like the writer is standing 3 steps back from the page. Your job is to come closer, not all at once, and not through force, but with honesty, self-trust, and a willingness to ask, what is this book really asking me to say? And as we move into this next part, I want to share something personal with you because I know this pattern from the inside. There was a point in my own writing where I realised I'd been doing something very clever. And I say clever because, honestly, the mind is brilliant at protecting us, isn't it? It can make avoidance look like craft. It can make fear look like refinement. And it can even make hiding look like professionalism. You see, I was working on a manuscript, and on the surface, I was doing all the right things. I was thinking about plot. I was thinking about pacing. I was thinking about character motivation. I was thinking about the practical pieces that matter when you're writing a book. But something felt flat, and I could feel it. The manuscript was moving, but it was missing something. It had bones, but it had very little breath in it. The characters were doing things, the plot was moving, but I could feel that I was keeping the deeper emotional truth at arm's length. And when I finally sat with it, really sat with it, I realised the part I'd been avoiding was the part that mattered the most. It was the emotional wound, the vulnerability, the emotional truth beneath the plot that made the story mean something. And the reason I'd been avoiding it was simple. It felt too close and raw. It felt like if I wrote that part honestly, people might see more of me than what I was ready to show. Now again, this was fiction. It was a made-up story with made-up characters in a made-up world. But emotional truth doesn't care whether the plot is invented. Your nervous system can still recognize the feeling and the truth underneath it. And it knows when you're writing way too close to something real to you. And that was the moment I had to choose. Was I going to keep writing around the truth and create a safer, flatter version of the story? Or was I going to let myself write the part that carried the real emotional heart of the story? That question changed the way I approached the scene. I stopped asking, how do I make this technically correct? And I started asking, what is true here? What is this character afraid to admit or feel? What am I afraid to let them say? What emotional truth am I trying to keep neat and manageable? And once I asked those questions, the writing shifted. It became more alive because I was finally writing from the emotional truth underneath the scene. The moment had more depth, the characters' choices made more sense, and the story started to carry the weight it was always meant to hold. And this is what I want for you too, because your book, the book that only you can write, isn't built from your ability to follow every rule perfectly. It's built from the place inside you where your writing craft meets your truth. Your words gives the book shape. Your truth gives it life and heart. And your creative wiring shapes the way that truth naturally wants to come through. So let's talk about that, because this is where NLP modalities become so useful for writers. In NLP, we talk about modalities as the internal sensory systems we use to process experience. In the Write the Darn book work, I use 4 main modalities with writers: the visual way of processing, the auditory way, the kinesthetic way, and the auditory digital way. Now remember, these modalities are tendencies, not boxes, and most of us use all of them. But many writers have one doorway that feels more natural when they're accessing the story, emotion, and meaning. And when you understand your dominant modality, you begin to understand something important about your creative truth. You begin to see how your truth naturally arrives and how you can harness that in your writing process. For a visual writer, creative truth may arrive as an image. You might see the scene before you understand it. You might know the emotion of a moment because of the way the light falls across a room, or because of the expression on a character's face. The truth might come through what you can picture. So for a visual writer, the question might be, what do I see when this moment is fully honest? And then see what comes from that. For an auditory writer, creative truth might arrive through sound. It might come through a line of dialogue. It might come through the rhythm of a sentence, and it might also come through something a character finally says aloud after holding it in for way too long. So for an auditory writer, the question might be, what needs to be said here? And then listen to what comes from that. For a kinesthetic writer, creative truth might arrive through feeling, so what you physically feel in your body. You might know a scene is true because you feel it in your chest, or in your stomach, or in the way your whole body responds when you imagine or feel the moment. You might need to move or walk or breathe, or perhaps even just sit with the emotional atmosphere of the scene before the words arrive. So for a kinesthetic writer, the question might be, what does this moment feel like in the body? And then close your eyes and feel where that question lands in your body. For an auditory digital writer, your creative truth might arrive through language and meaning. You might need to understand logical what the scene means or what the character motivation is before you can write it fully. You may be drawn to the belief beneath the behaviour, or the pattern beneath the emotion, or the sentence that finally names what's been happening all along. So for an auditory digital writer, the question might be, what is the real meaning of this moment? Or what's the character's inner motivation? Now, none of these modalities are better than another. None are more creative or more valid. They're simply different doorways in-row your own creativity and writing. And this matters because so much writing advice assumes everyone enters their story through the same doorway. Some writers are told to visualize the scene, and that works great for them. But other writers try to do that and they can't visualize anything, and feel absolutely blank. Some writers are told to hear the characters talking, and suddenly by doing that, the whole scene opens up for them. But for other writers, they might not be able to hear the characters clearly, but instead they need to feel the emotional weight of what their characters are feeling first. And some writers need to understand the meaning of the moment and their character's motivation before anything else will move. When a strategy matches your modality, writing often feels more natural. When a strategy fights the modality you gravitate towards most, you could mistake the friction for failure, when it's simply the wrong strategy for how you are uniquely wired to write. So as we move into the practical part of this episode, I want you to hold this question gently. How does my creative truth usually come to me? Do I see it? Do I hear it? Do I feel it? Or do I understand it through language and meaning? That awareness isn't a label. It is a key. And it's a key you can use to unlock your creativity and the emotional truth of your story. So now let's use that key. The first practice is to notice the part of the book that keeps asking for your attention. It might be the scene you keep circling, even though you haven't quite written it yet. It might be the chapter that feels emotionally important, but also a little harder to approach. Or it might be the moment that keeps coming back to you when you're in the shower, driving the car, or lying in bed at night. That part of the book may show up in different ways. It may feel emotionally important, even if you're still working out why. It may feel a little tender to approach, or it may simply keep returning to your mind like your creative self is saying, there's something here worth paying attention to. So ask yourself, what part of this book keeps asking for my attention right now? And then look at that part through the doorway your mind uses most naturally. If you're more visual, ask yourself what image, scene, expression, or setting keeps coming back to you. If you're more auditory, listen for the line of dialogue, the sentence, or the truth that wants to be spoken. If you're more kinesthetic, notice what feeling is sitting underneath the scene and where you sense it in your body. And if you're more auditory digital, pay attention to the question, pattern, or meaning your mind keeps trying to work out. That repeated tug is worth listening to because it often points you toward the emotional truth of the book. Not always the easiest part to write, but often the part that carries the most meaning. The second practice is to ask the deeper question. Most writers begin with surface questions, and surface questions do have their place. For example, what happens next? What does the character do? What is this chapter about? Those are useful questions and need to be asked, but creative truth usually lives one layer below them. So once you've identified the scene, chapter, or idea that's pulling at you, ask one deeper question. What's this really about? And give yourself time to answer. A scene about an argument might really be about the fear of being abandoned. A chapter about productivity might really be about self-trust. A mystery might really be about justice, grief, power, or the human hunger to be seen. The deeper question helps you move from what happens on the page into what the moment actually means. And again, use your modality. See the deeper image if that's how your mind works. Listen for the sentence beneath the sentence if the truth comes through sound. Feel the emotional truth if your body is the doorway. Name the meaning clearly if language and logic help you find your way in. Let your own mind lead you through the doorway it knows best. The third practice is to write to the edge. The edge is the line between what feels safe and what feels true. It's the sentence you almost write, but don't. It's the confession the character almost makes. It's the paragraph in your nonfiction chapter that feels a little too honest. And it's the moment in your story where the emotional stakes become real. Writing to the edge doesn't mean that what you write when doing that will end up in the final published version of your book. But it does mean giving yourself permission to draft it privately, messily, honestly. You can refine it later. You can shape it later. and you can decide what belongs in the final manuscript later. But first, the truth needs somewhere to land. So your practical writing action step from today is this. Write the scene you've been afraid to write. Set a timer for 10 minutes, open the document or your notebook. Choose the scene, the paragraph, or the moment in your book that keeps asking for your attention, and then write towards the truth of it. Begin where your modality naturally begins. So it could be with the image, if that's what comes first. It could be with a line of dialogue, if you hear it before you understand it. It could be with the feeling, if your body knows before your mind does. Or it could be with the meaning, if you need to name what the moment's really about. And write one honest page. That's all. One honest page can change your relationship with the whole book because it proves to your nervous system that the truth can come through you and onto the page. And my friend, that is where the book Only You Can Write begins to breathe. Now, before we close today, I want to invite you to something that connects so beautifully with everything we've been talking about. I'm running a free live masterclass on the 30th of June at 10 a.m. Sydney time called Write to Your Wiring, Discover Your NLP Modality and How It Shapes the Way You Write. Inside this free masterclass, we'll explore how your dominant NLP modality shapes the way you access your story. We'll look at how you process ideas, and we'll also look at what helps you move from creative resistance back into creative writing flow. This masterclass is for you if you've ever wondered why certain writing advice works so well for other writers, but feels awkward or frustrating for you. It's also for you if you're ready to understand your own creative process more deeply so you can begin writing with your natural wiring instead of constantly trying to squeeze yourself into someone else's process. You'll walk away with practical tools and strategies that you can use in your very next writing session. It's free and there will be a replay available to those of you who sign up. So if you want to understand more about how you are uniquely wired to write, I would love you to join me. Head to madisonmichaels.com/masterclass to save your free spot, and I can't wait to see you there. Also, if you want to discover what your dominant NLP modality is, I have a free quiz on my website that you can take. Just head to madisonmichaels.com/quiz. So as you head back to your book today, I want you to hold this close. The story only you can write is found in the way you uniquely see the world, the way you hear what's said and what's unsaid, the way you feel the emotional undercurrent of a moment, and the way you make meaning from what's happened, what matters, and what is still longing to be expressed. Your creative truth. And your creative truth is the thing no other writer can copy. It is uniquely yours. So harness it. Ask the deeper question, write to the edge, and give yourself one honest page. Because somewhere out there, there's a reader who will one day find themselves inside the truth you were brave enough to write. And remember, you are the vessel for your story. So let the words flow through you and onto the page. Until next time, my friends, take care and let's write the darn book together. My friend, I hope today's episode gave you exactly what you needed for your writing journey. And if it did, would you take 30 seconds to share it with another writer who's struggling to start or finish their book? And if you're loving the show, I'd be so grateful if you left a quick review. It means the world to me and truly makes my day to know that this podcast is helping you. And as you head back into your week, I hope you feel more supported and connected to your creativity. And remember, you're a vessel for the story. So let the words flow through you and onto the page. All right, I'm off to refill my cup of liquid gold and go and do a little writing of my own. Take care, and I'll meet you back here in the next episode of Write the Darn Book.